The white yacht slowly drifted away from the dock, while my own son watched me from the pier, tears mixing with anger on his face. It was in that moment that I understood. Ingratitude hurts most when it comes from the one you sacrificed everything to raise. My name is Edward Charles Thompson. I'm 72 years old now, but this story happened when I was 58. I'm a retired businessman from the coffee export industry, living in San Diego, California, where I built everything I have today. I started from nothing, you know. I came from a small town in rural Kentucky, where my father owned a general store. I learned early that nothing falls from the sky in life, and that the sweat of honest work builds more than empty dreams. Today, sitting on the balcony of my oceanfront condo, I watch the sun rise every day and thank God for having survived the greatest disappointment of my life, the betrayal of my only son. I spent my entire life accumulating assets, not for myself, but for Michael. I worked 16 hours a day for years. I missed his first birthday because I was closing a deal in Colombia. I missed his second because I was in San Diego, overseeing a shipment. My marriage to his mother couldn't survive it. She said I only thought about work, but what she never understood was that every penny that went into the account was thinking about our son's future. When we separated, the boy was only 8, but I made sure to be present in his life, even living in another city. I paid for the best school, then for his economics degree at Stanford. I bought his first brand new car when he got accepted to college. I used to say, "Son, everything that's mine will one day be yours. I'm building all this for you." Before continuing this story, I'd like to thank the Grandpa's Voice channel for allowing me to share my story. And I ask you who are watching to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. Every day there's a new story here. Stories like mine, from people who have lived a lot and learned lessons that only time teaches. But getting back to it, how could I imagine that the boy to whom I gave everything, absolutely everything, would be capable of excluding me from the most important moment of his life? And worse, call me toxic, as if I were poison in his life. The poison was what was coming, and I wasn't the one preparing it. I was born in a small town in Kentucky, in a simple house with a dirt floor. My father, Anthony, had a small general store where he sold a little bit of everything, from groceries to headache medicine. My mother, Elizabeth, took in sewing to supplement the income. There were 6 of us siblings, with me being the oldest. From an early age, I learned to wake up with the roosters to help in the store before going to school. I studied in the morning and worked in the afternoon. Studying was done by lamplight, with second-hand notebooks and pencils that I sharpened with a pocket knife to make them last longer. By 15, I knew everything about coffee. My father started buying from small producers in the region and reselling in Louisville. I went along for the negotiations, learning to recognize good beans, to smell the aroma, to negotiate a fair price. When I turned 18, coffee was already our main business. At 22, I got a job with an exporter in San Diego and left Kentucky with a suitcase of clothes and a strong desire to succeed in life. In San Diego, I started at the bottom at Pacific Export. I carried sacks, checked shipments, did manual labor, but always observing, learning. In 3 years, I was already in the office handling the commercial side. At 28, I was promoted to operations manager. Around this time, I met Helen, a beautiful woman who worked in the finance department. We married 6 months later, in a simple ceremony. Helen was from New York, daughter of merchants, an educated woman with an accounting degree. Unlike me, who only had a high school diploma and a lot of practical experience, she encouraged me to go to college. I started business administration classes at night while working during the day. It was a time of great sacrifice, but when I finished the course, I was already the commercial director of the company. Michael was born when I was 30. It was the happiest day of my life. I remember holding that little baby in my arms and promising myself that he would have everything I didn't, that he would never need to work as a child, that he would study at the best schools, that he would have comfort. I intensified my work pace even more. When the boy was 5, I received an offer to become a minority partner in the company. I invested all our savings. Helen didn't like it. She said it was risky, that we should think about buying a bigger house instead of investing in the company, but I saw further ahead. With 7 years of partnership, I already had 35% of the shares. The business prospered. We exported to Europe, Asia, South America. By this point, the marriage was already in crisis. Helen complained about my absence, the constant trips. She would say, "Edward, you're missing your son growing up." And it was true, but I always answered, "I'm building his future." We separated when Michael was 8. It was painful, but we maintained a civilized relationship for the boy's sake. Michael stayed with his mother in San Diego, in the apartment I bought for them. I moved to a smaller apartment near the port, more practical for work. On the weekends I spent with my son, I tried to make up for my absence. I took him for walks, to the movies, for pizza. During vacations, we traveled together. I showed him the entire country, from coast to coast, from the Grand Canyon to Niagara Falls. When Michael turned 17, he was accepted to Stanford to study economics. I bought an apartment for him in Palo Alto, furnished it, put in all the best. I gave him a brand new car as a gift for getting accepted. I deposited a generous allowance every month. I remember saying, "Son, take advantage of this opportunity, study, graduate, then come work with me at the company. One day all of this will be yours." During college, Michael seemed like a responsible young man. He got good grades, interned at the best banks, graduated with honors. I was so proud at his graduation that I cried like a child. After college, he decided to get a master's in finance. I supported him, of course, paid for everything, including a 6-month study abroad program in London. When he returned from abroad at 25, Michael began working at an investment bank in San Francisco. I wanted him to come to the export company, but I respected his choice. It's good to have outside experience, I thought. By this time, I had already bought 2 more properties in San Diego, an oceanfront condo and a house in La Jolla. In addition, I had financial investments, stocks, and a majority stake in the export company. An estate estimated at $8 million, built with a lot of hard work. It was around this time that I began to notice changes in Michael's behavior. The visits became rarer. When I called, he was always busy. "Dad, I'm at work." "Dad, I'm in a meeting." "Dad, I'll call you later." And later rarely came. During holiday celebrations, he would show up, stay a day or two, and leave. He always seemed to be in a hurry, as if being with me was an obligation, not a pleasure. Then he started dating Isabella. I met the young woman during one of his rare visits to San Diego. Beautiful, I can't deny, younger than him, about 24, always very well dressed, with designer clothes. Michael said she was an influencer, which I didn't really know what it meant. I only understood later that it was this thing about posting photos on the internet all day. I found it strange that this was considered a profession, but I bit my tongue. Who am I to judge? The important thing was my son's happiness. I noticed that after he started dating this Isabella, Michael changed even more. Now it was always the 2 of them on social media, at expensive restaurants, international trips, buying designer clothes. I even commented once, "Son, does your salary cover all this lifestyle?" He got angry, said I was insinuating that he couldn't support himself. That wasn't it. I was just concerned. After all, I know the value of money and how easy it is to spend it when you have a life of appearances. That's when I began to notice the first signs that something wasn't right. Michael, who had always been a simple boy, was now obsessed with status, with showing a luxurious life on social media. And worst of all, he seemed to hide from everyone that he had a businessman father. In his posts, there was never any mention of me or our history. It was as if he had emerged from nowhere, as if everything he achieved was solely his own merit, without acknowledging everything I did to provide the opportunities he had. It was on a Saturday morning that my life turned upside down. I woke up early, as I always do since my Kentucky days. Even retired, the body doesn't forget the work clock. I prepared my strong black coffee, some biscuits that I'd frozen myself, my dear mother's recipe, and sat on the balcony of the apartment to see the ocean. It was my sacred weekend ritual: coffee, newspaper, and the sound of the waves. I finished reading the printed news and decided to take a look at this Facebook thing. I confess I was never very keen on these technologies, but Michael himself had insisted I create an account. "Dad, this way you can see my photos. We can communicate more easily." Little did I know that that social network would be the messenger of the greatest disappointment of my life. I opened the computer, entered my password, always written on a small piece of paper under the keyboard, because my memory isn't what it used to be. And there I was, clumsily navigating through the posts. That's when I saw a post from Michael that left me paralyzed. The publication already had more than 500 likes and dozens of congratulatory comments. The text said, "Finally married. Best day of my life with my Princess Isabella Warren. And the best part, away from toxic people who only bring negativity. New cycle without people who pull me down. Newlyweds, free from toxic people." Along with the text, there were 47 photos of a wedding. My son had gotten married and didn't invite me. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I was breathless, hands shaking, eyes tearing up, a bitter taste rising in my throat. How? My only son had gotten married behind my back. How? I was a toxic person. I went through the photos one by one, like someone poking a wound to see if the pain is real. There they all were, cousins, uncles, childhood friends, college buddies, even his mother, Helen, all smiling, all her relatives too. Everyone except me, the father who gave him everything. But what hurt the most, what really broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, was one particular photo. At the main table of the wedding, there was an empty chair with a sign, "Reserved," and the caption on the photo, written by my own son. "Reserved for who deserved to be here, Dad." That dad was like a knife through my chest. My son had not only excluded me from his wedding, but was publicly mocking my absence, making a joke of it, turning the contempt for his own father into a reason for laughs on social media. I stared at that screen for almost an hour, in disbelief. I reread the post several times, hoping I had misunderstood, but there was no mistake. It was as clear as water. My son considered me toxic, negative, someone who pulled him down. Me, who had only elevated him his whole life. With still trembling hands, I picked up the phone and called him. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it wanted to jump out of my mouth. After a few rings, he answered. "Hello." His voice sounded distant, cold. "Michael, is this serious?" That's all I could say, my voice breaking. There was silence on the other end of the line, then a sigh of impatience. "Oh, you saw, huh? Well, Dad, you're very negative, controlling. Isabella agrees that you're toxic." "Son, I paid for your college, your car," I began to say, but he interrupted me. "Exactly, always throwing it in my face. That's why I didn't invite you. You think money buys everything, that because you paid for my education you have the right to control my life. But son, I never wanted to control your—" Click. He had hung up on me. I tried to call again, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent a message. Nothing. It was as if I had been erased from his life, from one moment to the next. That day was the longest of my life. I walked around the apartment like a ghost, trying to understand what had happened. I mentally revisited our relationship, trying to understand where I had gone wrong, what I had done to deserve being called toxic by my own son. Was sacrificing myself to give him the best being toxic? Was proudly saying that I paid for his education, throwing it in his face? I couldn't eat anything all day. At night I took a sleeping pill, but even so I spent hours tossing in bed, those words "toxic people" echoing in my head. When sleep finally came, I dreamed of Michael as a child running on the beach, calling me Big Dad. I woke up with my face wet with tears. On Sunday it really began to sink in. My son had gotten married without inviting me. He had done this on purpose, with the intention of hurting me, of publicly humiliating me. And worse, this Isabella, whom I barely knew, apparently agreed that I was toxic, she who had never lived with me, whom I had seen at most 3 times in quick lunches. She also thought I was the villain of the story. That's when anger began to replace sadness, a cold, calculated anger that grew inside me like a storm forming on the horizon. I opened Facebook again and saw that more people had liked and commented on Michael's post. Some of my cousins who were at the wedding didn't even bother to let me know. Nobody. It was as if everyone was complicit in that cruelty. On Monday, I made a decision. If I was so toxic, if my money, my sacrifices, my lifetime of work were so negative, then Michael no longer needed them. I went to my office, opened the safe, and took out all the property documents, bank statements, company papers, everything that proved the wealth I had built thinking of his future. I called my lawyer, Mr. Maurice, a gentleman of my age, who had handled my legal affairs for more than 20 years. Maurice, I need you here in the office now. It's urgent. He arrived in less than an hour. I explained the situation, showed him Michael's post, told him about the call. He listened to everything, shaking his head in disbelief. Edward, I have 5 children, and I can't imagine one of them doing this to me. I'm truly sorry. Well, Maurice, now I need your help. I want to change my will. I want to sell everything I can. I want to make sure that ungrateful boy doesn't get a penny from me. Maurice sighed. Edward, are you sure? Wouldn't it be better to wait for this dust to settle, to talk to him calmly? There's no talking, Maurice. You saw what he wrote. You saw what he did? He humiliated me publicly, called me toxic, laughed at my absence at the wedding, an absence that he himself caused. No, Maurice, it's over. If he thinks I'm so bad, then he doesn't need my toxic money either. That same day I called my real estate agent. Steve, I want to sell the properties, all of them, as quickly as possible. All of them, Edward? But what about that apartment that you always said was for Michael, especially that one? Next, I called my bank manager and asked to liquidate some of the investments. I needed cash and fast. I had a plan forming in my head, a plan that would make my son understand exactly what he was losing by treating me that way. While these arrangements were being made, I discovered more things about Michael and Isabella. A nephew of mine, who had gone to the wedding, called me embarrassed. Uncle Edward, I should have told you before, I'm sorry. But it's just that Michael told everyone that you knew about the wedding, that you were the one who didn't want to go because you didn't approve of Isabella. What? I barely know the girl. How could I not approve? Exactly, Uncle. He said that you had a big fight, that you called Isabella a gold digger, that you said she only wanted your money. Everyone at the wedding was talking about how you were a jerk. I was speechless. My son had not only excluded me from the wedding, but had invented a story to make me the villain. He had tarnished my reputation in front of the entire family, all the friends. He had transformed me into the monster of the story. Later, another nephew sent me a message saying that Isabella had given a speech at the wedding, thanking everyone for supporting her and Michael, despite the toxic absence of the father-in-law. She who had barely spoken to me in her life, she who apparently believed the lies my son told. In the days that followed, more revelations came to light. I discovered that Michael was living a life of luxury in San Francisco that went far beyond his salary as a financial analyst. The apartment where he lived, which I thought was rented, was actually paid for by Isabella, who earned well as a digital influencer. The car he drove, a latest model BMW, was financed. The payments consumed almost half of his salary. Even more shocking was discovering through another nephew that Michael presented himself to Isabella's friends as a self-made man. He said he had achieved everything on his own, that he came from a humble family and had overcome his parents' limitations. He went so far as to say in a group of friends that I was an old hick who could barely use a computer. He who had had everything in life thanks to the sweat of my work. Each new discovery was like a dagger driving deeper into my chest. The son I raised, whom I loved more than anything in this life, not only despised me but lied about me, distorted reality, transformed me into a villain to justify his own choices. And worse, he did all this out of vanity, to seem more important than he was, to impress his wife and her friends. That's when I made the final decision. I wasn't just going to cut Michael off from my inheritance. I was going to teach him a lesson he would never forget. A lesson about gratitude, about respect, about the consequences of treating like garbage someone who only did good for you your whole life. I called an old friend who worked at a yacht dealership in San Diego. Arnold, remember that yacht you showed me last month, the Azimuth 120-footer? Is it still for sale? It is, Edward. $5 million. Why? Decided to make your dream come true? Exactly, Arnold. I want to buy it in cash, and I want it as soon as possible. While the property sales were proceeding, I worked on the details of my plan. The yacht I decided to buy wasn't just a luxurious boat, it was the perfect symbol of my liberation. I chose to name it Freedom. An irony that only I would understand at first, but that would soon become clear to everyone, especially Michael. My trump card wasn't just in the money I had, but in something that Michael clearly didn't expect. I knew how to play the game of appearances better than he imagined. During years as a businessman, I learned that image is everything in the business world. Michael thought I was just an old hick, but he had no idea what I was capable of. Besides, I had something that neither Michael nor Isabella possessed, a network of contacts built over 30 years of business, people who owed me favors, who respected my name, who knew who I really was, not the caricature my son painted. And I was going to use every one of those contacts to teach the lesson those two deserved. The first part of the plan involved a complex financial operation that was only possible thanks to my friendship with George, director of one of the country's largest banks. In just 1 week, I managed to liquidate investments, sell the 3 properties, at some discount, but that didn't matter at that moment, and gather the necessary amount for the purchase of the yacht and everything else I had planned. Edward, are you sure you want to do this? That's $8 million in assets that you've built over a lifetime, George asked, concerned. George, we can make money again. Dignity, respect, those are priceless. My son needs to learn this lesson. With the money in hand, I moved on to the second phase of the plan. I bought the yacht in cash, to the amazement of the seller, $5 million in a single check. The Azimut 120-footer was a true floating mansion. 3 floors, 5 suites, dining room for 20 people, jacuzzi on the upper deck, 2 auxiliary boats, a symbol of luxury and status that would make any digital influencer drool with envy. But I didn't stop there. I hired the best chef in San Diego, Felipe, who had worked in Michelin-starred restaurants in France, to prepare a mouth-watering buffet: lobster, caviar, foie gras, the best cuts of meat, the finest champagnes. It cost me $20,000 just for his service, not counting the ingredients. For decoration, I spared no expense. $50,000 in imported flowers, magnificent arrangements that would transform the yacht into a setting worthy of the best decorating magazines. I bought 30 bottles of Cristal champagne, the favorite of celebrities, at almost $2,000 each. I hired a famous DJ from Los Angeles, a recommendation from a friend who owned a nightclub, for $30,000. And to finish with a golden key, I commissioned a fireworks display that cost $40,000. It seemed like an exaggeration, perhaps, but I wanted it to be perfect, unforgettable, grandiose. I wanted it to be something that Isabella's Instagram had never seen before. Something that would make Michael realize exactly what he was losing by calling me toxic. With everything prepared, it was time for the final move, the invitation. I didn't invite Michael directly. Instead, I sent a message to Isabella, who I knew wouldn't resist the opportunity to post photos on social media from a luxury yacht. Hi, Isabella, this is Edward, Michael's father. Even though I wasn't invited to your wedding, I'd like to offer my gift. I'm throwing a surprise party on my new yacht Saturday at the marina in Newport Beach. You can bring Michael. Of course, it will be a celebration for the new phase of your lives. The response came in seconds. Yacht? Seriously, father-in-law? We'll definitely come. Can I bring my photographer? I'll make wonderful content. I gave a sad smile reading that. She didn't even disguise her interest. She didn't ask why I had a yacht. She didn't question why I was being generous despite what they had done. She only thought about the photos, the content, the image she could sell. Of course, Isabella, bring whoever you want. It's going to be a party for the whole family. And that's how, the following Saturday, I docked my new yacht at the Newport Beach Marina. It was a sunny day, perfect for sailing. The Freedom was magnificent, all decorated, the crew in uniform, everything impeccable. I invited 100 people, all the family members who went to the wedding, all of Michael's friends, everyone who had participated in that farce. I arrived early, before everyone else. I wanted to personally supervise every detail. As the guests began to arrive, I noticed the looks of astonishment, the whispers. How does Edward have a yacht this size? Where did this come from? Does Michael know about this? It was exactly the reaction I expected. No one, absolutely no one, knew about my plan. I welcomed everyone with smiles and glasses of champagne, like the perfect host, but I saved the best for when the guest of honor arrived. Around 5 p.m. I saw Michael's car parking. He and Isabella got out, she stunning in a white dress, clearly chosen for the photos, he with a suspicious expression. Isabella looked at the yacht and her mouth opened in genuine amazement. "My God, that's like a ship!" Michael seemed confused, trying to understand what was happening. The two approached the gangway that led to the deck, where a security guard with a guest list controlled access. "Name?" asked the security guard, following my specific instructions. "Michael Thompson," my son answered, still looking at the yacht in amazement. The security guard consulted the list, then looked at Michael with a serious expression. "Sorry, you're not on the list." "What do you mean?" "It's my father's," Michael exclaimed, beginning to turn red. It was at that moment that I appeared on the upper deck, microphone in hand. I had planned every word I would say, every gesture I would make. It was my moment of justice, of showing the truth that my son had tried to hide from everyone. "Hello, Michael. Glad you came." My voice echoed through the speakers. All the guests who were already on board approached the railings to watch the scene. "You know, this party is to celebrate my freedom." I made a broad gesture, showing the name of the yacht. "Freedom from an ungrateful son who calls me toxic?" Michael's face lost its color. Isabella beside him looked from the yacht to him, confused. "I sold your entire inheritance, $8 million, 3 houses, the investments, everything." I made a dramatic pause. "I bought this yacht and I'm going to travel the world." There was a collective murmur among the guests. Some laughed nervously, others seemed embarrassed. Michael down there on the pier began to shout, "Dad, are you crazy?" "That was my money," I replied calmly. "Son, it was my wealth. You would have been the heir, but an heir invites his father to the wedding." I heard some discreet applause behind me. I looked into the eyes of my son. That boy I had raised with so much love, now a man full of arrogance and ingratitude. I felt a mixture of sadness and satisfaction. Sad for what I had to do, satisfied that he was finally facing the consequences of his actions. Then I turned to Isabella, who was watching everything with her mouth open, the photographer's camera beside her, already recording every moment. "Isabella, dear daughter-in-law, you can come aboard," I said to everyone's surprise. "After all, you didn't post anything calling me toxic. You just believed your husband's lies." I smiled. "Come see how your father-in-law really lives." There was a moment of hesitation. Isabella looked at Michael, who now seemed desperate. Then she looked again at the luxurious yacht, at all the guests drinking champagne, at the magnificent buffet, and made her decision. She boarded the yacht. It was a surreal moment, Michael shouting from the pier, begging her to come back while Isabella came aboard, being welcomed with a glass of champagne. Her photographer followed her, snapping away non-stop. I saw the exact moment when Isabella realized the potential of that situation for her social media, the gleam in her eyes as she looked around. I welcomed my daughter-in-law with a hug, to everyone's astonishment. "Welcome aboard the Freedom, Isabella. Let me introduce you to the family that your husband said I didn't have," and I began to introduce her to everyone, cousins, uncles, longtime friends. "This is my daughter-in-law whose husband didn't invite me to the wedding because he said I was toxic." With each introduction, I saw the shock on the relatives' faces, especially those who had believed Michael's lies. Meanwhile, Isabella circulated around the yacht as if she were the hostess, posing for photos with the lobster, the caviar, the champagne. She seemed to have completely forgotten that her husband was down there on the pier, desperate. From time to time, I looked down and saw Michael trying to call Isabella. She would look at her phone, ignore the call, and continue her photo session. His face became increasingly red, the desperation more evident. The party continued magnificently. The chef served a 5-course dinner that drew sighs from the guests. The DJ played the best music. The champagne flowed freely. And in the midst of all this, Isabella posting stories on Instagram. My father-in-law is amazing. Guys, you have no idea what Michael did. Look at this wonderful yacht that Edward bought. When the night was already late, I decided it was time for the final blow. I took the microphone again and asked for everyone's attention. Isabella, dear, I need to tell you something. She approached, curious, the phone still in her hand, recording everything. Michael said that you agreed not to invite me to the wedding, that you also thought I was toxic. Her face transformed. I never said that. That's what I thought. I smiled. He told me that you agreed with him, that you also thought I was controlling, negative. How absurd. Isabella seemed genuinely indignant. He said that you didn't want to come, that you hated weddings, that you had fought with him because you didn't accept me. I shook my head, feigning surprise at information I already knew. And what else did he say, Isabella? He said that you were a cranky old hick, that you barely had a roof over your head, that you only had a small apartment in San Diego. He never mentioned a yacht, a company, none of this. The guests listened to everything in silence, shocked. I had achieved what I wanted, to expose Michael's lies not just to Isabella, but to everyone who had believed him. I understand. I made a dramatic pause. And if I tell you that until yesterday I had 3 properties, a coffee export company, and investments that totaled $8 million, that all of this would be Michael's inheritance one day. Isabella's eyes widened. What? That's right. Until I discovered that he called me toxic on social media and didn't invite me to the wedding. Then I decided to sell everything and buy this yacht. I'm going to travel the world, live my life. After all, an ungrateful son doesn't deserve an inheritance. Isabella went pale. Her gaze alternated between me and the pier where Michael was still waiting. I could see the thoughts passing through her head, recalculating everything she knew about her husband, about me, about their future. Then, without saying a word, she went down to the pier. I saw when she approached Michael, her face transformed by anger. Even from a distance I could hear the shouts. Michael, you lied to me. You said your father didn't want to come. You have a millionaire father and you hid it. You live in that lousy apartment lying. I married a broke liar. The guests crowded at the railings of the yacht, watching that scene like a live reality show. Michael tried to calm Isabella, holding her arms, but she broke free, increasingly furious. That's when she said the words that completed my revenge. You know what? I'm staying on the yacht. She turned and pointed at me. Edward, can I be your goddaughter? You're the father I wish I had. Michael fell to his knees on the pier, defeated. Isabella returned to the yacht triumphant while he was left behind, humiliated, exactly as he had tried to humiliate me. Michael, I shouted one last time, take your things and leave Isabella's apartment. Oh, don't worry about money for rent. I'm sure your mother will take you back. It was at that moment that I gave the order to the captain. Let's set sail. The yacht began to slowly move away from the pier as the fireworks display began, illuminating the sky of Newport Beach. 100 people celebrating on board, loud music, laughter, champagne, and my son being left behind, diminishing in the distance, a lonely and pathetic figure on the pier. At that moment, looking at Michael getting smaller and smaller while freedom advanced into the sea, I felt a confused mixture of emotions. There was satisfaction for the justice done, of course, but there was also a deep pain, a sadness for the son I had lost, not that day, but much earlier, when he decided that status and appearances were more important than honesty and gratitude. The last I saw of Michael that night was him with his head down, alone on the pier, while Isabella posted on her stories, single and on my wonderful ex-father-in-law's yacht. 3 months have passed since that night in Newport Beach. Time has this power to heal wounds, or at least to give us enough distance to see them with different eyes. Today, sailing through the Caribbean aboard the Freedom, with the sun setting on the horizon and the sea calm as a mirror, I have time to reflect on everything that happened. Revenge has a sweet taste, I won't deny it. Seeing Michael abandoned there on the pier, after everything he did to me, brought an immediate satisfaction. But satisfaction is not the same as happiness, and justice is not the same as peace. In the days that followed that party, even traveling on this luxurious yacht, even having taught a lesson that will never be forgotten, I found myself thinking about the little boy who once ran into my arms, calling me Big Dad. Where did I go wrong? Did I dedicate myself so much to building wealth for him that I forgot to build a man of character? Did my absence during his childhood, always working, always traveling, create this void that he filled with vanity and materialism? These are questions that still haunt me on sleepless nights, when not even the gentle rocking of the sea can lull me to sleep. I don't regret what I did. Michael needed that lesson. He needed to understand that our choices have consequences, that you don't treat your own father the way he treated me without paying a price. But as a father, I can't help but wonder if I could have avoided reaching this point. The truth is that life takes unexpected turns. After that night, Isabella really did separate from Michael. I found out from relatives that she went back to the apartment, which was indeed hers, as I discovered later. She packed her things and temporarily moved in with a friend. Michael, with nowhere to go, ended up returning to his mother's house in San Diego. Helen called me furious, wanting explanations. I told her everything. I showed her Michael's posts, the screenshots of the messages. She cried on the phone. "Edward, I'm sorry, I didn't know all this. He told me that you didn't want to go to the wedding, that you had fought with him." Well, Helen, it seems our son learned to lie very well. Michael tried to sue me for the inheritance money. Mr. Morris laughed when he found out. "Edward, he has no right whatsoever. The assets were yours. You did what you wanted with them. Legally, there's nothing to discuss." Michael lost the case before it even began, and still had to pay the costs. What surprised me was the direction things took with Isabella. After the separation, she continued to seek me out. At first, I confess I was suspicious. I thought she just wanted to enjoy the yacht, take photos, maintain the luxury she valued so much. But over time, we began to develop an almost father-daughter relationship. Isabella came from a humble family from upstate New York. Her father had abandoned her mother when she was a child. She grew up without a father figure, struggling to survive, until she discovered social media and began to build her career as an influencer. Behind that facade of futility and materialism, there was a girl starved for paternal affection, for guidance, for someone who was proud of her. One day, talking on the deck of the yacht while we were sailing along the Colombian coast, she confessed to me, "Edward, when I met Michael, I fell in love because he seemed so confident, so successful. Only later did I realize that it was all a facade, that he was pretending to be something he wasn't. I paid most of the bills while he pretended to be the provider, and the worst part is that he lied about you. He said you were a failure, an ignorant hick. I never imagined that you were all this." She made a broad gesture indicating the yacht. I smiled, finally understanding the game that Michael had played. He was ashamed of my humble origins, of my simple, small-town Kentucky ways. He preferred to invent a non-existent father than to admit that he was the son of a man who started from nothing. "Isabella, I am a hick. I was born in a small Kentucky town, in a house with a dirt floor. I started working in my father's store. Everything I achieved was with a lot of sweat. I'm not ashamed of my origins. On the contrary, I'm proud of them. Too bad my son didn't think the same way." She took my hand with tears in her eyes. "I wish I had had a father like you." It was at that moment that I understood that perhaps fate was giving me a second chance. Not to be Michael's father, but to be a father figure to someone who really valued it. Gradually, Isabella became a constant presence on my travels. Not as a freeloader, but as sincere company, someone who listened to my stories with genuine interest, who asked for advice, who shared her own struggles and achievements. So ironically, the same person that Michael used to push me away became the person who filled a bit of the void he left. Not that Isabella replaced my son, nothing, and no one ever could. But she brought a new kind of family relationship into my life, something unexpected and comforting. On one of the trips, Isabella met Jason, a distant cousin of Michael's, who was also on board. The two hit it off from the start. Jason was a doctor, a serious, hard-working, respectful young man, the opposite of Michael in many ways. In a few weeks they were dating. In a few months, engaged. I heard from relatives that Michael didn't handle the news well. Seeing his ex-wife with his cousin, supported by the father he had renounced, was a hard blow to his pride. He lost his job at the bank, started drinking too much. Helen calls me sometimes, worried. I try to help as I can from a distance. After all, despite everything, he's still my son. Today my life is very different from what I planned. Instead of being in San Diego, taking care of the export company, enjoying the quiet retirement I imagined, I'm traveling the world on my yacht. Instead of having my son and grandchildren close by, I have Isabella, who has become like an adopted daughter, and Jason, who treats her with the respect that Michael never showed. Recently, I received news that caught me by surprise. Isabella is pregnant. It's going to be a boy. They're going to name him Edward Charles in my honor. I'm going to be a kind of grandfather to this baby, although without a blood tie. Michael will ironically be technically the uncle of the child, although I doubt he will exercise this role. Life takes turns, doesn't it? The son I raised excluded me from his life, while a young woman I barely knew became part of my family. The money I saved for Michael is now being spent on travels, experiences, moments I never had time to live while I worked incessantly thinking about the future. I've learned that the future does arrive, yes, but rarely in the way we plan. If there's one lesson I take from all this, it's that gratitude isn't taught with money. Character isn't built with inheritances. I could have given Michael 10 times more, and still, he could be the empty man he revealed himself to be. Similarly, Isabella, whom many would judge as superficial because of her profession as an influencer, showed more character and sensitivity than I imagined. Another important learning: it's never too late to start over. At 58, I thought my life was mapped out, that my path was straight and predictable to the end. Now at 72, I see that life can always surprise us, for better or worse. The important thing is how we react to these surprises, how we adapt, how we transform even pain into fuel to move forward. I don't know what the future holds for me or for Michael. Part of me still hopes deep down that one day he'll knock on my door, regretful, ready for a sincere reconciliation. Another part knows that this may never happen and that I need to find peace with that possibility. For now, I continue sailing literally through seas never before explored. The freedom has become not just the symbol of my revenge, but also of my liberation. Liberation from expectations, from frustrated plans, from the chains that tied me to a life that no longer exists. If you've made it this far, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you really followed me to the end of this journey, comment the word gratitude below. Only those who watched will understand the meaning. I thank the Grandpa's Voice channel for this opportunity to share my story. Who knows, maybe the next one will be even more like yours. Sometimes it's in the most unexpected moments that we find our true direction in life. A tight hug from this old hick here, who learned that we sail better when we release the moorings of the past.